Hi, and welcome back to another AnyRPG Development Livestream. In this video series, you can watch the live development of the AnyRPG Engine, a free and open source role-playing game engine designed in Unity and written in C#. If you don't already have a copy of AnyRPG, you can pick one up from anyrpg.org/downloads in both Unity package and source code format. You can also find available at the same page The Lost Soul, a free playable game that you can watch me working on in these episodes. In this episode, we will be continuing the work on the custom character stat system. Over the last 4 episodes, I implemented a new custom character stat class to get rid of the hard-coded primary stats. Then we just made health a resource so that you can assign from it and spend it. We made the secondary stats into a system enum, and then we worked on the combat system to make it so that you can just generically attack or reduce or add resources because health and mana no longer exist. And so over the last little while, what I've been doing is actually adding secondary stats to equipment in the game as well, and going through and just fixing up the combat text and such so that the combat text actually shows the right color for the resources that were spent. So in this episode, I just wanted to go over some of the stuff that I did just because I didn't stream it. So we're going to go over that, and then we're going to add a really cool new feature. So the feature that we're going to be adding in this episode is random secondary stats. So I have a subscriber here who has been asking for a couple of features, and with this update, it's actually a really good time for me to actually add 2 of these, the random item quality and the random secondary stats. So I know I'm going to mispronounce your name here, but Seda Veral, this episode is for you. You're going to get 2 of these features in this episode. So let's just jump into the game and take a look at it for a sec, just because I wanted to explain what sort of changes that I made to this system in order to make it seem just a little bit more logical. So looking at the character now, you now see 7 secondary stats on here, and there's actually 8 in the game, but one of them is damage, which is just added to both physical and spell power, so there's not really any point in displaying it as a second stat. And with accuracy and casting speed, these are actually special. So these used to be multipliers where like 1 meant you'd be multiplying it at a regular value, and 0.5 would mean like it would be like half of its normal value. I changed that though, so accuracy is now basically 100 is its normal value, and that means that you have a 100% chance to hit something. So in the game, everything has a 100% chance to hit, but you know, you can be blinded and that can reduce your accuracy. So if you have like an accuracy of like 200%, and you get blinded, which reduces it by 50%, then you'd still have 100% accuracy. Casting speed is much different because this used to be a direct multiplier, but it didn't really make sense because you'd actually have to put negative values on it in order to get better stats out of it. So if you look at casting speed right now, you can see it says plus 20 speed down there, which is the casting and attack speed value. And since you want your cast time to be lower, previously we used to affect cast time. In this case, your casting speed is 260%. 100 is the base value, just like accuracy. And then we have movement speed down here. So with a casting speed of 260%, you're going to cast 2.6 times as fast as normal. So what that means is that a spell that would normally take like 2.7 seconds, like this Solar Singe, is now down to 1 second. I've also allowed the casting animations to speed up, so let's just have a look at that as well. So we can go aggro this spider over here, and he's going to come over to us, and then we can basically just blow him away with this spell that just casts super fast now and always crits, because we have a critical hit chance of 176% here. In order to accomplish those hard-coded changes to accuracy and critical hit chance, what happens is when we're initializing those, we actually set some special values now inside of the stat object, and I'm just trying to see if I can find the code here. Here we go. So let me just zoom in a little bit there. And so when we're initializing our secondary stats now, we set the default value for accuracy and speed to 100, just to make that 100%, and then we can work with it from there, and it makes a lot more sense when the character is looking at gear that increases those values, because it's a lot more easier to reason about 100 of something than 0.276 of something. So now basically it's time to add custom character stats, or I mean random character stats and random gear. So we have hard-coded gear. The stats don't really change on it, and the quality doesn't change on it, and we want to have some variety in our dungeons, and we want to be able to have like funny items that drop too, like you know, we could have a warrior's axe that drops with like a random stat of like plus spell power or something on it. So let's go ahead and do that. What I've done is I've added the secondary stats to the gear here as a list, and so there are 8 secondary stats in the game: movement, speed, accuracy, critical strike, speed, which is both attack and casting speed, like physical, damage, which is both physical and spell damage, and then physical and spell separately as well, and then armor. So we will make these random, and then we'll also make item quality random as well. So to do that, why don't we start with item quality, and we'll edit this, and we'll add a new checkbox onto this that says random item quality. So that will be in the base class item. Here we have item quality, and we can add a new Boolean here. Random item quality. Actually, I'm going to add this down at the bottom. In the future, I may make a list of like things that you can constrain the item quality to for now, or to, but for now, I'm just going to have it basically all item qualities available. So if true, then a random item quality will be selected. So let's go back into the inspector and just see what that looks like. Okay, perfect. So now we have the random item quality. So what I want to do is make a set of random item quality gear. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm looking at this ancient cloth bracers item, and this is basically that cool set that we have in like set bonuses and stuff. But what I want to do is we'll just duplicate all these things here, and we'll make some other item for them, so you can get like a just completely random cloth items in the dungeon that'll drop for you. So I just hit Control D there, and now I've got a bunch of random items here. So instead of ancient, why don't we call these things like the dusty cloth bracers item, because they're like in the desert, so that kind of makes sense. So what we'll do is we'll just rename all these things to the Dusty, and then we'll have a set of completely random cloth gear to work with. Okay, great. So now we've got our Dusty set, and what I'm going to do is just rename this here. Dusty cloth bracers, gloves, hood, mantle, pants, robe, sash, and shoes. And then we will select all of them, and then check the random item quality checkbox, and then just blank out the regular item quality box. All right, looks good. And now these items can have random item qualities. Now we'll have to add some code for that, obviously, but from the inspector point of view, that's all that's needed for now. And we'll want to do the same thing basically for secondary stats. And I'm just going to add a random secondary stats right here. So secondary stats are on the equipment class, not on the item class directly. So they're right there. And we'll add a new Boolean for random secondary stats. And if true, let's see, the number of, or let's see, the secondary stats will be chosen randomly up to a limit defined by the item quality. Yeah, that's the way that I'm going to do it. And it's false by default, so we will save that. And we'll select once again all of the Dusty items here and select that box for random secondary stats. So now we have an items that will have random item quality and random secondary stats. Okay, so far so good. Now what we need to do is go into the item quality. So we have these item qualities here. Common, epic, heirloom, legendary, poor, rare, and uncommon. So what we want to do here is we've got stats, and I'm going to put it under here. First, we want to know how many secondary stats an item with this item quality should be allotted. So for legendary, maybe we'll give like 4 secondary. For epic, like 3. For blue, we could give 2, and for green, 1, for example, and then for common and uncommon, 0. And then I also want to add basically like a name, so we can override it and like actually change the name of the item. So for like a rare quality item, we can call it a superior dusty cloth bracer, for example. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go into the item quality class here, and we'll add some fields. So the first one we want is an int, and the int will be random stat count. And basically, we'll make a tooltip for that that says if an item of this quality is created with random stats, this is the number of random stats that will be chosen from the, that will be chosen. Perfect. And then by default, that can just be 0. Then we need the field for the description, which is a string. So we'll make a description, and this is going to be private string random quality prefix, and it can be string.empty by default. And if an item of this quality is created randomly, I guess, then this prefix will be appended to the item name. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the inspector now after saving that file. Okay, good. So we will go back to that item quality, which is legendary, and so for common we will have no random stats and no prefix. For epic we'll have 3 random stats and a prefix of uber. For heirlooms we will have no random stats for now because I'm not really using them, and no random quality prefix for now. You know what? When we inherited, actually this is random quality and heirlooms are not part of the random quality. So for legendary item quality we'll have 4 random stats, and it will be the godlike whatever the item is. For poor we'll have 0 random stats, and it will be the inferior whatever the item is. For rare we'll call it superior and give it 2 random stats, and for uncommon we will give it 1 random stat, and we will call them, I don't know, enhanced. Let's save that And then we actually need another Boolean here to control whether or not these things are available to us as a random item. So let's put one in here. And I guess I'll make a new header here. Call it random item settings. And allow random items. And we'll make that false by default and say that basically if true, then random items of this quality can be created. Okay, that looks good. Let's refresh that and see what that looks like now. Okay, good. Random item settings. Allow random items, quality prefix, and stat count. Good. So we're going to take everything. We're going to allow random items on all of it. Then we're going to go to heirloom and just uncheck it on that one. And now you can make random items of everything except for heirloom quality. They'll have a prefix and a stat count. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to be able to add that prefix to the item's name. So let's do that. Looking at items like our dusty cloth bracers, you can see that we've got a description profile and we've got a name, but I want like an override on that name. So what we're going to do, if you look at our description profiles, like if I look at the ancient cloth bracers description here, we actually have a display name. So we might as well use that because basically this resource description here shares a base class. So all we have to do is basically just move these variables down into the resource profile. And now they will be available to everything, not just the regional descriptions. So you should see it jump up to right underneath resource name there. All right, good. There we go. And now if we look at our items, like our dusty cloth bracers, you can see we now have a display name field. This is good because we're going to need to save these items and we'll need to somewhere to basically put this because we need to look them up by the proper name, the dusty cloth bracers, when we're actually looking them up like from the system dictionaries and databases and stuff. But when we're displaying them, we'll want to actually use our special display name for them. So you can have your godlike dusty cloth bracers. So next thing that we need to be able to do is actually create these random stats on the item. I think we have everything that we need in terms of inspector properties for that now. So now we need a way to actually create them. So that's going to be done during the process of looting an item. When we loot an item, we create a new copy of that item, and that's the point when we can go and set up some stats and stuff on it. So let's see, I think I'm just going to close a bunch of this stuff here. We've got item open, we've got equipment open, and those are the two that we need open for this. Okay, so in our item class, we'll need a way basically to initialize our item when we get a new copy of it. So we already have a type of initialization method down here called setup scriptable objects, but I don't want that one to be run because that'll be run like on the base copy of this item, and I only want the thing to be run specifically against new copies of this item. So we'll add a new public void initialize new item, and we'll make it virtual, and then let's see, items have qualities. Therefore, this is the level at which we should do the display name, and items do not have random secondary stats. That's at the equipment level, so we'll set the secondary stats at that level. So initialize new item, we're just going to make a note here basically, choose the random item quality. So to do that, let's see, we need to pick a random item quality from the list of available item qualities if this item has a random item quality. So if random item quality is true, then we need to basically loop through all the item qualities in order to get the sum of item qualities that we can use. So we'll get the number of item qualities that are valid for random item quality creation. So for that, we need to do a for each item quality in system item quality manager dot myInstance dot get resource list. Which is a function. Okay, good. And then let's see, we will need to copy that to a new list so that we can pick from that new list. So for that, we will make a new list called valid item qualities, and that's a new list of item quality. Yeah, and we have to define its type. So next, if our item quality dot, and I believe I need to actually expose this as a property. So we will quick actions and refactoring and encapsulate allow random items. We might as well encapsulate random quality prefix and random stack count as well. We'll save that, go back to our other window here, and if item quality with a lowercase I dot allow random items, yeah, then we're going to add to our valid item qualities dot add item quality with a lowercase I. Okay, so now that we have our list of valid item qualities, we will go ahead and choose a random one. So first we want to make sure that the valid item qualities dot count is greater than 0, otherwise there's no point. And next we want to choose a random number. So what we will do is we have item quality with an I, which is defined up here as a string. I believe we have real item quality. What we want is we want to set the real item quality value. So real item quality equals, and we want to get from the valid item qualities list, and we want to choose an index in between mathf system dot random, and do I need to include system? I need to include system, so using system. Oh, right, it's like random, sorry, random.range. Wow, what am I missing here? Sorry, I'm not sure why my Unity editor is it Unity Engine? System.collections. Okay, maybe that'll help. There we go. wrong namespace. Okay, so Unity Engine.random.range, float min is 0 and min is inclusive and max is inclusive. So we want a value that is as high as valid item qualities dot count, but because this is an index, we want that to be a count of -1. Okay, that should give us a real item quality. Okay, good. So let's save that. And then what we want to do is in equipment, we want to go through and grab the random stats. So we will override that. Let's just make sure, yeah, this was public. So let's see, right down here after setup scriptable objects, we will do a public override initialize new item. We'll do the base.initialize new item first because we want to make sure that this item has an item quality. And then actually here we grab the real item quality, but we didn't set the name yet. So we need to do that first. So our display name is equal to our real item quality dot random quality prefix plus a space plus, and this is only if the random quality prefix is not null and not string.empty. So if real item quality dot random quality prefix does not equal null and real item quality dot random quality prefix is not string.empty. Otherwise, we'll just let the item's display name be whatever the actual display name is. Otherwise, our common bracers would have had an extra space in them for no reason. So real item quality dot random quality prefix plus a space plus my name, which is the item's actual name. Let me just go to the definition of that. Yeah, good. That just gets the resource name. Okay, good. So that will set our display name. And our item quality. Now let's go choose our item quality stats. So what we're going to need here is a variable on the equipment to store the chosen stats. So we'll make this a private list of int, and we'll call this the random stat indexes. This will allow us to store what indexes we used. Then we will also need to store a list of secondary stat nodes so that while we're playing the game, the random stat indexes is what we'll be saving with the item, but these will be a short list so that we can just cache them and not have to do lookups like in real time while the game is running. So this will also be a private. And here we have random secondary stats. And I'm just going to call this one chosen secondary stats then, since that other name was already taken. We are going to expose that. We'll need to expose these as well for when we save our equipment. Okay. Now that we've got that stuff saved, or added, we can begin actually choosing random secondary stats. So let's go ahead and do that. When we initialize the new item, if random secondary stats is true, then what we want to do is go ahead and choose some. So first we need to make sure we've got an item quality. So let's actually change this around. What we'll do is if random secondary stats is false, we'll just return because there's nothing to do. Similarly, if real item quality is null, we'll just return because there's nothing to do. Next, we need to go ahead and initialize the random secondary stats, which means getting the max number and cycling through the list and adding them to our current list and index. Okay, so the max number is going to be real item quality. First, I think we'll actually just get the indexes. That'll probably be the easiest. So we need a list of actually, you know what? We already have one because we already have the list of chosen indexes. So while our chosen secondary stats, let's see here, chosen secondary stats. While our random stat indexes, that's what we need. So while our random stat indexes dot count is less than the size of the real item quality dot random stat count. Oh yeah, I guess, you know, if the real item quality equals null, we can also, if it's 0, we don't need to do anything. So if our real item quality dot random stat count equals 0, we'll return. So while our count of our random stat indexes is less than our real item quality dot random stat count, we're gonna pick some random numbers. So one of the things I'm just thinking here is if our item doesn't actually have 4 random stats on it, then that might be an issue. So we will set our max count. We'll make an int max count, and we will set that to the mathf.min of our random, no, not random secondary stats, our secondary stats, and the real item quality dot random stat count. And this is the secondary stats.count. Okay, good. So basically what happens is, like, if we only have 2 secondary stats on the item, we're only going to get 2 secondary stats even if our real item quality has 4. If we have 8 secondary stats on the item and our real item quality has 4, we'll get 4 because we had that many available. Perfect. So this is max count. So now what we want is basically, well, this is less than max count, then we want to basically choose a random number. So we'll do an int random number equals random dot range. And this has got an overload that'll give us an int, so we just want to give it int values here. So the random number will be an int between 0 and in this case, what do we want to choose here? This will be a random number between 0 and our secondary stats.count. Yeah, okay. And let me just check, is this inclusive or exclusive? That's exclusive, perfect. So basically this will give us a number that fits properly within that index. So now we need to check if we already have chosen this random number or not. So if not, random stat indexes dot contains random number, then random stat indexes dot add random number. Okay, good. And then now we should end up with a bunch of random stat indexes. So now what we want to do is we actually want to go ahead and make our list of chosen secondary stats that are based on that. So for each int random index in random stat indexes, and we want to add to our new list, so we're going to add to our chosen secondary stats. And we will add the secondary stats at the index of random index. Okay, great. So now we have a new array with our chosen secondary stats available. Now what we want to do is we want to expose that. So we expose our secondary stats through this property right here, and we can make some adjustments to this property so that we're exposing the right set of stats. We don't need to set this. Not really, because this is now sort of a computed property. So what we're going to do is we're just going to return secondary stats by default. But first we're going to check if random secondary stats is true, then we're going to return chosen secondary stats instead. Okay, so now we have the ability to choose secondary stats, and we have the ability to choose item qualities, and we have some code to call that, called Initialize New Item. Now what we need to do is, when we actually grab a new item, we need to do something about that. So we grab new items through the system item manager. So let's just go take a look at that piece of code. We can find this here under our system item manager. And we have this code right here called get new resource, and this is what gets called. So what we're going to do here is first we call setup scriptable objects, and then we're going to call initialize new item, which will take care of setting any random item qualities and any random item stats. Okay, so now we have a way to actually perform this initialization when we instantiate a new copy of this item. And now what we want to do is we want to actually have a way to get these. So I need to add that stuff to a loot table. So let's go ahead and do that, and I think I want to make some adjustments to the loot table to adjust the way that loot is calculated, because the way that we currently have our loot table is not gonna work like super fantastically. So let's go find the ancient energy loot table, Temple of Ancient Energy Loot. Here it is. And here we've got a bunch of like armor that can drop. So what we want to do is we'll copy that. So we'll take element 0 and we'll duplicate it. So now we have our first list of armor, and then we'll do our dusty list right here. So what we want to do is just go through and delete like the first 16 of these, I think, until we have nothing but cloth items left. Okay, good. So we will replace the item name with Dusty. Replace them all with Dusty. Alright, and we are not going to match the item restrictions on any of these. We want these random items to drop for anyone, because you can imagine that these random items, like our set pieces are special, we only want those to drop for the class, but these random items we want people to like put on the auction house and stuff when we eventually add network support. So we're not going to match restrictions, like cloth can drop for anyone, plate can drop for anyone. Now, we're going to be ignoring the global drop limit in here, and what I want to do is I want to add a new type of drop rolling. I want to call it like a guaranteed drop, basically. So right now what happens is we go through and we evaluate each of these things individually at a 20% chance. And if we get one, then we've hit our drop limit and we're done, right? But what that means is that like there's a very rare chance that you'll ever get the shoes, unless the shoes are a unique item, because chances are you've probably already gotten an item like by the time you get halfway down that list. So to fix that up, what I want to do is basically like add a new option called guaranteed drop list. And what that'll do basically is it'll just randomly select one item from this list and then drop it. So you get an equal chance at all items on the list rather than each item being calculated individually, and it won't take that drop chance there into account. It'll just override it. So let's go ahead and add that option, because what I want to do is I want to basically be able to say like just give me 4 items randomly off this list just for testing, or you know, just give me all 8 of them. I could increase them all to 100%, which would do that, but I still want that option available for people anyway, because I think it's just a nice flexible option. So what we're looking at right here is the loot groups. So we can see the loot groups. We're going to go to the definition of that, and loot groups has a list of loot, and ignore global drop limit and drop limit, and this is where we're going to add another Boolean. So here we're going to call this a guaranteed drop, and it'll just be false. And so if true, then drop limit items will be randomly chosen from the list, ignoring their individual drop chances. So we'll save that. It's false by default, which is what we want because we really only want it to apply to this sort of special group right here that we're making right now. Okay, good. And now, so we're going to do a guaranteed drop, and you know what? I want all 8 of them to drop. Why not? Okay, that's good. So now we've got a loot table. As soon as I kill a mob in the Temple of Ancient Energy, we'll get all 8 of these items at random item qualities. However, one thing that I forgot to do, see, when we're rolling the random item quality, right here, we have a completely equal chance of getting any item. I think for now that'll actually be okay. What I want to do though is I want to make it a weighted chance so that like legendary items, for example, are far less likely to drop than other items. So let's go ahead and go back to that loot group. And then we'll find where this drop limit is being referenced. And so we'll want to expose guaranteed drop as well and include that logic wherever we're actually using this. So we'll find all references to drop limit, and when we go through the loot group, this is it right here. Okay, so normally we run through this list right here and individually calculate whether or not we're going to drop them. What we want instead is to just go ahead and drop X number of these individually. So what that means is basically we have to get a bunch of indexes again. And we just happen to have some code to do that right here. So we will make a new list of int called random item indexes. It will be a new list of int, and while our random item indexes.count is less than max count. And of course we also want to make sure that our loot groups loot is the right size for that, so we'll need this max count again. So we're going to choose the minimum size of the And in this case, we want, let's see, drop loot group dot drop limit. And loot group dot loot dot count. We'll be choosing a number between 0 and loot group dot loot dot count. Changing this to random item indexes, and now we have a list of random item indexes with all the loot in it. Okay, so now what we want to do basically is we want to encapsulate this logic right here, so we can just call it on all these items. So to do that, let's see, we're basically adding a list of get new resources. So we'll basically just want to return a list of loot drops. So we'll make this a public list of loot drop. And we'll call it get loot drops, I guess, for better. Get loot drop. Okay, and our return value, which is a list of loot drop, return value equals new list of loot drop. Then we want to pass in the item, which is loot. And at the very end of it, we want to return our return value. Then we basically want to take all this code right here and pull it out and call this instead. And what we want to do is here we are adding the stuff to dropped items. So what we want to do is dropped items dot add range, and we are going to get loot drop, passing in item. Okay, good. And then here, this is loot. This is loot. this is loot. And we also need to pass in all these values too. So loot group, unlimited drops, ignore drop, limit, loot group, remaining drops. And loot table, unlimited drops. And we need to make sure that let's see, are we actually setting these anywhere? Minus equals 1, we are setting them. Loot group remaining drops. And loot table remaining drops. Okay. So we will pass in the bool loot group unlimited drops. And pass in the bool ignore drop limit. Okay, and pass in the bool loot table unlimited drops. And I have loot table remaining drops here available to me. That's neat, I think, because loot table remaining drops is global. Okay, so that's good. So we only need basically loot group remaining drops. As a variable. Okay. So loot group remaining drops. Okay, let's just start by passing in those first ones here. So we have loot group unlimited drops, ignore drop limit, and loot table unlimited drops. All right, so then now we can basically call this right here from here. And do we care about the loot group remaining drops? We do. So loot group remaining drops is an int. And I think I have to add the word out right here. And loot group remaining drops and the word out. And sorry, it's been a while since I've done C# out parameters. Just have to look this up here for a second. Okay. So if I go loot group remaining drops, I think if I do equals loot group remaining drops -1, that works because I'm now assigning to a new variable. I think I have to set it. No, that doesn't work either. And it actually needs to be set as out. Yes, I'm doing that wrong. I'm supposed to be using ref. Sorry, this should say, I think, ref int loot group remaining drops. And I think I can put ref loot group remaining drops there. Okay, finally. All right, good. So that should work. Sorry, don't do those types of parameters very often in C#. But there we go. Now we have code that should be able to finally add stuff to our dropped items list. So now what we want to do is we want to basically for each int random item index in random item indexes get loot drop should get the item, which is our loot group dot loot at random item index. Okay. And so we only want to do this random indexed code if we're actually using random indexes. So if our loot group dot let's just see if that's exposed. And this is guaranteed drop, basically, is what we called that. So if loot group dot guaranteed drop is true, then we're going to do all this stuff right here. Else, we're going to do all this stuff. Right here. Okay, I think that'll work. Let's hop back into Unity, go check the console out, and make sure that everything is compiling okay. Okay, good. Everything compiled, no errors, and now we should be able to get all 8 items from this loot table. I'm just going to save this because if we made any sort of infinite loops, we want to make sure everything is saved. The item will get a random name. I think it's time to test it out. Let's just go check that and see everything that we added so far. Is it working? Okay, that makes sense. We need some resource descriptions, so if we look at the ancient cloth bracers description, I need to make descriptions for the dusty stuff, so we're going to hit Control D. Duplicate all those. And we will call these dusty. And these resource descriptions are where I am saving the icons because I can't redistribute icons with the game, so I need dynamic references to them. Or I can't redistribute them with the engine, I mean. So we'll create all the dusty resource descriptions here. And then we need to set all the names to dusty up here. Okay, let's save that and try loading the game again. We're going to load up our channeler here. We're going to go aggro the spider, let it come through the wall so that we can actually target it. We're going to one-shot it, and let's open up our loot list. And I have a dusty cloth robe. I have some legendary dusty cloth bracers. I have some poor quality dusty cloth pants. Nice. Okay. I have a legendary dusty cloth hood. Dusty cloth gloves. So what I'm noticing here is that the display name isn't showing, and that's because we didn't hook up the display name. The number of stats on them is absolutely correct though, and one thing I need to do is remove these from the ancient armor item set. So let's go fix those issues right now. So we'll go to the dusty cloth bracers items, choose all of our dusty gear, go down here and remove it from the ancient cloth set so it doesn't think that it's part of that and try to calculate set bonuses based on that. Next thing we need to do is, this is actually in, I think it's actually the resource profile class itself here. So here it is. It's not resource description, it's not resource profile. We want, go to implementation, and we want describable resource. There we go. Okay. No. Here. We're setting the resource description profile, and then we're overriding the resource name based on that. Okay. So we actually want to do something really similar. We want to overwrite the resource name, and we want to overwrite it let's see. This is kind of an interesting one because if there is a resource description and this is regionalized content, we want the regionalized version of this to show, like if it's like Chinese or something. But we also want that prefix. So I think I'm just going to allow the regional one to overwrite it for now if the regional one isn't empty, but let's set the resource name. And we'll want to set the resource name if our let's see. We want to display the name if our display name isn't already null. Let's just try something out here. I think I'm going to go down actually right to the resource profile here, go to the definition of this. We have this string display name, then we have public string my display name. We're getting the display name. We want the name to actually get, I think, the display name instead, or just find all references to name and use display name if display name isn't empty. Okay, that's what we need to do. Okay, so basically here we will return resource name, but if display name does not equal null and display name does not equal string.empty, we will return display name. Good. And display name will be empty on like basically everything, so this should only happen on those objects. Okay, what was the other problem? They were not part of the set and they were not showing the display name, so I think both of those things are fixed. So let's let that compile and then go jump back into the game and see if our gear has proper names now. Okay, so basically we'll go aggro the spider again, or this time it's a mummy, and we'll nuke it, one shot. Okay, so what I don't see here is a new name on the dusty cloth gloves. So let's go check what's happening there. When we're displaying our resource profile here, everything is keying basically off of the my name field. If the display name is not null and it's not string.empty, we're going to be returning the display name. Now, the display name on the resource profile gets set when we loot the item and get loot drop we'll call the item manager.get new resource, which will call initialize new item. We know we got the item quality correct because we set it. So let's just go check the prefixes then. So if we go look at legendary item quality, oh, you know what? I know what the issue is. I know exactly what the issue is. We're not keying off of my name. This is precisely the problem right here. Right here. No, we are keying off of my name in get description. Okay. So yeah, the mystery deepens then. All right. Let's throw a debug message in here so that when we roll these items, we can just keep track of whether or not it's actually setting them. So this is my name plus initialize new item. So dot item dot initialize new item. And then we just want to know setting display name. just want to see these values right here. Whoops. Okay, good. So that'll let us see if the display name is being properly set on the item. Let's just go check if my name is virtual. My name is not virtual, so nothing will overwrite that. Okay, I just want to get those items to drop, and let's just see what that says, because we do have this quality prefix here. Okay, so we'll nuke the mummy. And okay, so it does say that we're setting the display name then, Superior Dusty Cloth Pants. Okay, so we set them, but we're not showing it properly. So let's see here. That pop-up, I don't know, it might be showing a different field. Let's actually just check when that's being called, and if it's being called in response to a mouse over. And like, I don't see any problems with this get new resource, because we know that this code basically it has to be working because of the fact that all that stuff is being set, and we can see like the item quality colors and such. Let me just check the tooltip code. Oh, you know what I bet is let's see. would that possibly be getting overwritten by the description? So if I look at the Dusty Cloth Bracers description, when we look at the setup scriptable objects call, we set the resource based on my display name, which is fine because that's just display name. Okay, let's just run this again and just see. If those debug messages tell us anything more interesting. Okay, so we initialize the new item. I actually don't see any get summary calls, which is kind of interesting. So let's go into equipment and just see, like, do we override it or something? So we're looking for get description here, and it doesn't get called. So let's go to the implementation and go to Armor. And here we call get summary. We don't call get description, so we're not going to be overriding it. And let's just go down into equipment and put some debug messages there as well. let's see, when we popped up the tooltip, I guess I want to see that code as well, because we should have actually seen the tooltip. All right, let's just let that compile. Okay, and the tooltip doesn't actually have its own controller on it. I believe that's actually handled through like the UI manager. So you know what? This is going to return 100,000 results, so I think it's probably better just to go to the UI manager directly, because tooltip is a word that's used very commonly in Unity. Tooltip text, here we go. So we're going to find all references to tooltip text. And this just says describable.getDescription. So this happens in show tooltip. And that happens in this show tooltip, or that show tooltip. Which happens on the mouse hover of the interactable. That's not the one we're looking for. This is the one we want, and this is on pointer enter. And we want this on the loot button. So this should be the entire chain of events right from the time that we hover over the thing. What is this? This is my loot. Okay, this is an item. No, that should work, because we know we actually have the correct item in there because we're showing the item quality on it. Yeah. Okay, let's just run through this again and just look at some of those debug messages and just see like what's happening with these items. Okay, these should be superior dusty cloth bracers. All right, so we're getting describable.myname. And we're getting that from my loot. Which gets a loot drop.myItem. Let's fix this up. Control AKF. We'll find when this gets set. Only through here. When we add the dropped item to the list, through the getNewResource call. Okay, more debug messages, I guess. Let's see, so if display name equals null, then debug.log display name is null. Else if display name is string.empty, then debug.log display name is string.empty. let's see, in the resource profile, no, we want okay. I think that's good for now because honestly I just need to see more debug messages to figure out why we are showing the wrong value when we set it. Okay, display name is string.empty. That's neat. Why is display name string.empty? Oh, wow, that's going to be pretty useless because this happens apparently every time that we get a power resource max amount. Ouch. I don't know that that's going to be much use. Wow. Okay. I guess we can't use that field. Actually, maybe we can. You know what? Let's just do resource name. And I feel like resource description, see, it doesn't override the name, but I feel like it's setting this name right here. Let's throw a debug in here as well because setting resource name to tmp resource description dot my display name. Okay. Yeah, let's just save that and let it compile and run through that again and see if we can find out why we're showing the wrong name. Oops. Okay, back to the console. Let's see. Dusty cloth. So every time our dusty cloth gear so let's see, we initialize the new item and we tell ourselves we are setting the display name. To Uber Dusty Cloth Bracers. And then we set the display name. And it looks like we're setting the right display name, because if we go down to the definition of that, we should be able to set it. No problem. Do we ever at any point overwrite it? You know what? Let's just find all references to that. Okay, so this is the only place that we ever set the display name. All right, let's look at my display name and find all references to that. And there's never a point at which we actually set it through there. Right? So at that point in the code, the display name should be set. We set the display name. Now let's actually just print out the display name just to make sure it actually got set. Right? Okay, good. So that's all good. And then in the next message, as soon as this thing finishes compiling, we can click on that and see it. All right. Now we initialize the new item and we get my underscore name. Why are we getting my, what just happened there? We clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, let's try that again. We initialize the new item. Oh. Hey, look at that. No, that's fine. Okay, so anyway, we get my name, yes. The first time that we get my name, it will be having an empty display name, which is fine. Because it will be adding the prefix to it. Okay, great. So now we have display name, not string.empty. So let's go back and just look at the dusty cloth mantle. Because here's our superior dusty cloth mantle right there. Okay, no worries. Just a second. Okay, hold on. We have an issue here. That's neat. We're setting the display name Dusty Cloth Hood, Dusty Cloth Robe. Somehow that doesn't seem right. So if we're displaying the quality prefix here, then how exactly is it? Oh, wait, equals. Wow. Wow. Okay. Sometimes it's right in front of your eyes the entire time. We had a buggy assignment in there. Wow, I can't believe that was like 30 minutes of writing debug codes because I didn't see that I was doing an assignment to a value instead of a plus in the middle of that operation. Let's try this again and let's see if we actually have the proper name for these items. Okay, so we're going to kill the mummy. We're going to drop some items. Oh yeah, there we go. Look at that. I have my godlike dusty cloth sash and my inferior dusty cloth bracers. Okay, let's get rid of all these debug statements because now basically we have to make a way to save this stuff. So we'll get rid of all these debugs. And we need to save all the stats on our gear. Because these random items, when we load them, they won't know which random values we had rolled. So let's get rid of some of those debugs. And some of these. And those as well. In fact, we can basically just get rid of an entire block of debugs. Okay, and that should clear this up a little bit. So, next thing that we want to do is save that. So let's go to the save manager. I think Unity's just compiling again. Yeah, okay. We're going to clear this out. We're going to open up the save manager and we're going to save it. So somewhere here in this giant thing, we save inventory slot data and equipment data. So let's go to the definition of save equipment data. All right, and let's see here. We need a couple of more pieces of information about this thing. So with our equipment, the only thing we saved is the name. So we need to save the display name because we're going to actually look this thing up by name. So public string display name. And we will also need to save the indexes of the random items or random stats that we chose. So to do that, we'll need to make a public list, and we'll need to call this random index. Wait a minute, just a second. Can I actually make a public list of ints? Do you know what I think I can? I think I can, this is serializable, and I can make a list of ints, I believe. And this is going to be called the random secondary stat indexes. And the question is, can I give it a constructor? I don't think I can because this is a struct. Okay. So then what we need is we need a way to actually access the main item name, and how can we do that? So when we go to the my name, it's actually going to grab the display name, and we don't want this. We actually want like the real item name. So I'm thinking why don't we switch this around? Why don't we let's find all references to display name. We only use it in a few spots. I think the easiest thing to do here, let's see, if I get rid of that, and I just rename this to my display name, then I can re-enable that one and change this out to my name and just have it grab the base resource name, and everybody will just be grabbing the display name instead, which I kind of like. So let's try that. My display name, 402 references and 116 files. Can I hit apply? Then we are going to re-enable this one as my name, and how do we want to handle this? So my name should return resource name. And actually, we should never really need to set the resource name. Okay, good. Everybody else is going to be grabbing my display name, and if my display name is not null and not string.empty, then we're going to grab display name, otherwise we grab resource name. I think that'll work. And now I should be able to grab my name. Now, is this one grabbing the correct property? I believe this guy needs to be grabbing his display name. Is that still fine? I think that actually is still fine. Okay, we'll just leave it like that and see if there's any issues, but I don't think there will be. So then now we can properly grab the name. So let's go back into the save data. So we're gonna save some equipment data, and we are gonna set the name equal to my name. And then we are gonna set the display name equal to the display name. Okay, good. So now, because we have the proper name, like the actual base name, we should be able to actually look up the equipment properly. All right, and finally we need to save the chosen indexes. So save data dot random secondary stat indexes equals, interesting that we've got this equipment equals null, huh? Okay, well, might as well keep that because it's probably there for a reason. If equipment equals null, then we'll just do that as null. Otherwise, we will do equipment dot and I don't think we exposed chosen secondary stat indexes, random stat indexes, and we did. Okay, so this will be random stat indexes. Okay, good. So now we can properly save that. We're going to need to do the same thing on the items in our bag because not everything will be equipped. So let's find where save equipment data is called from, and we also have save, I believe, inventory slot data is what it's going to be called. that's it. So we'll go to the definition of that. And here we've got some information. So we need to go to inventory slot save data. We need a public string my display name. And we need a public list of int random secondary stat indexes. Then we need to do the same thing here. We'll actually just call this display name. And here we want slot script.myItem dot my display name. All right. You know what else we need to save? We actually need to save the chosen item quality as well. So public string item quality. And we will need to save that as well in the equipment save data. So public string item quality. Okay, so far so good. Now let's save the item quality. So save data dot item quality. And that will be my item dot my item quality dot my name. Here, same thing, slot script dot my item is null, then we're going to save that as null. Otherwise, now here we need to perform a check. If the slot script.myItem as, let me just make sure there's an item, yeah, as equipment is equipment, then and only then will we use the random stat indexes. Okay, good. So now we want to look for save equipment data and do the item quality on that one as well. Go to the definition of that and item quality, and this is equipment is null, otherwise equipment dot my item quality dot my name. Okay, so that allows us to actually save our customized gear. Let's just let it compile. And compile some more. And then we will make it so that we can actually load that gear. So let's save that. And then we now want to find the load equipment data function. Okay, so here we will have called getNewResource. We're passing in the equipment save data dot my name. So before we equip this, we want to set some things on it. We want to set the display name equal to the equipment save data dot display name. Let me just make sure that we're actually setting that. You know what I'm just thinking? This should actually be setting display name equals value. Because we don't want to reset the base name, because that should always return the resource name, because that's what we use for dictionary lookups. Okay, good. So now we set the display name. Now we want to set the item quality. So new item dot my item quality, and this is going to return item quality. In this case, I guess we might as well just look it up directly. So system item quality manager dot my instance dot get resource based on the new based on the equipment save data dot item quality. Okay. And then we want to set the chosen indexes of the random stats. So to do that, we go new item dot random stat indexes equals equipment save data dot random secondary stat indexes. Okay. So the final thing to be done is we have to tell this item somehow that it needs to copy over the items from the random stat indexes array. Let's go to the definition of getNewResource and go to Initialize new item. With items, it's fine, so we actually just care about equipment realistically. We'll go look at the Initialize new item code here and see what we can do with it, basically. So here we get the secondary stat indexes. There, right there, good. So this we can make into a separate function. We're going to cut that out of there. We're going to make this a public void initialize random stats from index. Just a nice verbose name where we can't really confuse what this thing does very easily. We've already set our random stat indexes, which is a global item. So now we can call this from anywhere, and Actually, I need to call that from there first. Initialize random stats from index. Okay, save that, and then go back to our save manager where we load the equipment data. And then we basically want to call new item dot initialize random stats from index, because the indexes will be set, at which point now the item can properly recall which random stats we saved on it. It'll have the proper item quality first, so that's good, because you know what, it doesn't matter because we already saved these indexes. Even though those indexes were based on the item quality, it should properly set its display name. Okay, good. So now essentially we just need to do this for the stuff that is in our bags. So let's save that, and now we need to load item data. So this is going to be called like load inventory slot data. Perfect. Okay. So we get the new item, then we add the new item to the inventory manager. And first, we want to do this stuff with it. So this is going to come from inventory slot save data. Same thing here, inventory slot save data. Now this right here, if new item as equipment is equipment, I don't think these brackets are necessary, but I like them anyway. If new item as equipment is equipment, then we want to do this stuff right here before throwing it in our bags. New item as equipment dot random stat indexes equals inventory slot save data dot random secondary stat indexes, and finally new item as equipment dot initialize random stats from index. Great. That is theoretically everything we need to do to load and save secondary stats on our items. Now, I suppose one thing that we should probably do, you know what, it doesn't even matter. This will probably work because we could just, if this is null and we set that to null, it doesn't matter. Yeah, let's try that out. Okay, so we are going to save the game. We're gonna press play. We're gonna hopefully see a load screen here if we didn't make any mistakes. All right, good. And let's try to get a drop here and try to save one of our items. So we're going to go aggro our mummy. We are going to not annihilate our mummy because we have an issue right here. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I see the issue here. Get valid attack ability is supposed to be getting off of my name, not my display name. That's kind of neat. Okay. So this is due to those changes that I made to display names. Now we asked for generic sword icon, which is the icon for the mummy attack. I'm actually just kind of curious here. We have this ancient mummy attack ability, which uses the resource description profile generic sword icon. So if we look at generic sword icon, basically we should not be setting the resource name. We should only be setting the display name. So this is going to be like down here. There, that's better. Hopefully that will fix the issue. And right here, interestingly enough, we got a null reference error for, okay, no, that wasn't a null reference error, that was actually a log error, which is quite intentional because we don't want to have names of non-existent abilities. Okay, good, this will hopefully fix all that. Then we can try loading and saving these things properly. So we're going to aggro the mummy. And we're not going to nuke him again. So, ancient mummy, still trying to use ability generic sword icon. Okay, let's go look at that code again. So, right, because what's going to happen is now that display name is a shared field, it's going to return the resource name if the display name is empty. So, in that case, we need to handle this a little bit differently. Basically, we need to expose like raw display name. Because we need it to be empty. So we're only going to use it like in that one spot, but it needs to exist. So public string raw display name, and we just return display name. no matter what. And then in this code right here, we just check to make sure that the raw display name is not empty, and then we can set the raw display name. Okay, much better. Hopefully that'll fix the issue. Okay, try it again. Aggro the mummy. Wait till the mummy comes through the wall. Cast on the mummy. Nuke the mummy. Ooh. The mummy is dead. Do you know what I feel like? I feel like my spell power went down. I should have had like 4,000 spell power for that. No, you know what? My spell power dropped on my character. My spell power used to be like 562. Huh. Interesting. Somehow I lost some spell power. You know what? Maybe I had like a buff on or something. Maybe I had like Blessing of the Makers. Oh, you know what? I see exactly what's happening. The reason my spell power went down is because all of my gear is now white quality. I understand exactly what happened here. When I loaded my gear from disk, the item quality string was blank on it. And so therefore it set the item quality to blank. We don't want to do that. We only want to do that if it's random item quality. So what we need to do is we need to actually save, or I mean adjust this thing, this code right here. So let's go into the save manager and do that. So basically if new item, we got random item qualities. Okay, just a second. Items do have random item qualities, right? Random item quality. Did I not expose that? I don't think I exposed random item quality. Okay, so we're going to make that private, and then we're going to right click and we're going to expose it, which will make it public, and then we're going to set that back to protected, because if it was protected when we did it, it would have made the property protected too. And so now, there, if new item dot random item quality is true, then we are going to set the item quality. Otherwise, we're not going to bother. Okay, and also here, how about we don't set random stat indexes if it's null. So if our inventory slot data dot random secondary indexes does not equal null, then we'll do that stuff there. Okay, and we'll want to do the same thing for the load equipment data. So we will go to load equipment data. And we will only overwrite the item quality if our existing item had a random item quality. And if our new item, no, you know what, we want if these do not equal null. So if random secondary indexes is not null, then we'll do the random secondary stat initialization before equipping the item. Okay, good. Let's try that, and hopefully my character will get the item quality set on his gear properly. Then he will once again be able to one-shot the mummies in that dungeon and get himself some nice random gear to test out. So we'll load her up. She's going to go aggro the mummy, come back here, nuke the mummy. There we go, 4060. That's how much damage I need to do, and I have the right amount of health and mana, 2420. Okay, good. I got a little bit of bag space, so we'll grab a few random items out of here. I like my godlike dusty cloth hood. That one's pretty cool. And how about my uber dusty cloth shoes? Those are pretty neat as well. Let's grab something really inferior here. You know what? Let's grab a superior dusty cloth robe as well. And wow, nothing inferior dropped for me. Okay. You know what? That's good enough. I'll just take all this stuff. Take it all. Okay. We got an ancient necklace, that's fine. Good. I have my superior dusty cloth mantle, my regular dusty cloth sash, my uber dusty cloth pants, and my godlike dusty cloth gloves. Do you know what? I didn't get any green items, interestingly enough. Okay, well, whatever, that's cool. We can just save this, and we cannot save it. All right. What do we got here? And this only happens if our item has an item quality. Now, this is interesting. I'm a little bit curious which item doesn't have an item quality. Oh, you know what? This is for anything. This is like all the gear in my bag, and yeah, you know what? Some of the items in my bag actually don't have item qualities. So we need to fix that, because it is entirely possible for me to have items without item qualities. So we can't assume that item quality exists, and therefore we can't necessarily write an item quality name. So basically, if the slot script.myitem quality is not null, then go ahead and do that. And in fact, what we'll probably want to do is go to the save equipment data and do the same thing, because I bet you that bug exists here. So equipment dot my item quality dot my name. Whoops. If equipment.myItemQuality does not equal null, that's what we want to do. Then we want to save it. Okay. So with that done, I just want to go back and look at uncommon, because we got a bunch of gear, and I didn't see any uncommon gear in that list, so I just want to make sure that uncommon item quality is available for random items. Okay. Might have just been luck of the draw. Just make sure that all these debugs are like commented. Okay, good. And let's go again. Let's try to get some drops. Let's see if we get some green items this time, and let's see if we can actually save our items with our custom character stats on them. So, aggro the mummy, nuke the mummy, loot the mummy. So this is interesting. I don't see inferior, and I don't see enhanced. Let's just check if the saving works first. Oh, you know what? There's some inferior ones. Okay, and here's some superior ones. Here's some regular ones. Some more legendaries. Some more purples. Okay, I think that was all the gear. Oh, you know what? There's a regular white one as well. Okay, let's hope that I can actually save this. Okay, good. No, look at that. We have a null reference, and what's going on here? We save all inventory slots whether or not there are items in them. So basically, this is why we actually have slot script.myitem equals null. So we'll do that, and let's just go to the save equipment data, because I feel like the equipment can be null as well. Okay, try that out. And you know what? I want to get rid of some more of these debug statements as well. Okay. Aggro the mummy. Nuke the mummy. Loot the stuff. I still don't see any uncommon, and I think there's actually a bug potentially with potentially a bug with the index in which I choose those things, because uncommon is the last one on the list, so I'm probably choosing an index that's too small. For now, however, we can still hopefully test the save here. You know what? Let me try to save it before okay, good. We can save it. Before I go and reorganize the entire bag here. Okay, save the game and just check this. So we got a Dusty Claw stat with speed, physical damage, armor, and spell damage. You know what? I'm just going to take a print screen of this. There. And let's go ahead and just load up GIMP so I can compare this afterwards, because I want to make sure that we get the correct indexes for the secondary stats. Although this screenshot does nothing to help me do that, because I'm not actually mousing over anything. Okay, let's try that again. You know what? Print screen there. Good. And then we'll just do like... Okay, so we know these ones have 0 stats. And actually, what's interesting about this is that you shouldn't actually be able to have 0 of a stat. So this item, I should actually be doing like mathf.ceal on that value. Anyway, we'll print screen that. Make sure that we've got these ones coming back the same way. Okay, so we have 20 armor and 1 accuracy. We have 20 speed, 20 physical damage, 20 spell damage, and 20 armor. And that is our godlike, superior, uber. Perfect. So save everything. Jump back. Actually, we might as well just exit the game entirely. We will get rid of that debug message 2, Control-Shift-S to save all those files and get rid of all the debug messages that I commented out while the game was running. And now let's jump back into the game and see if we can actually load our gear. Okay. So when we load the gear, I'm trying to grab the godlike dusty cloth sash. Let's just take a look at our saving function, because I may be saving the wrong name. So when we save the equipment data, we're grabbing my name, which is correct. We're grabbing the display name, which is correct. Okay. So far, so good. Now, when we load the equipment data, okay. We're grabbing it based off of my name, which should be the proper name. Here we're loading inventory slot data. Once again, based on inventory slot data dot my name. Okay, so that doesn't seem right. So what happens when we're saving the inventory slot data? There, we set my name equal to my display name. So we actually save the wrong values, meaning like basically we'll never be able to load those. Okay. As for the actual item, we are choosing the wrong indexes because we're not getting uncommon qualities. So this random.range is exclusive, not inclusive. So we want to not have a -1 on the count up there. If we save that, we should now be able to hopefully get green items dropping for us. And then we should be able to save these items and load them properly, I hope. So let's let that compile and try that out. So we're not going to be able to load those items because they were invalid. So we're going to have to kill another ancient spider here. And there we go. And there we go. Now I have my enhanced dusty cloth shoes. Wow, this is great. Okay. Perfect. So let's take all that stuff. We now have all the different qualities here, except for, you know what? Wow. Ah, there we go. Good. I got a godlike dusty cloth hood here. And my enhanced dusty cloth shoes and my regular dusty cloth robe. Somewhere I have an uber dusty cloth robe. Oh, I don't think I got any superiors that time. Oh well, that's alright. Good enough. Okay, we're just going to save that, and you know what? Do I have inferiors? I got inferior. I just want like a row of them from like lower or highest quality to lowest quality. Okay. Save it. Exit the game. Reload it and make sure we actually save the correct item names now, and we can actually load the correct items. So I'm going to open up my bags, and that's not right. My uber dusty cloth robe has 4 stats, and my godlike dusty cloth hood has 5 stats. So somewhere along the way, these items picked up extra stats somehow. What's really curious here is that my enhanced dusty cloth shoes still only have 1 stat, and my dusty cloth mantle has 3. Okay. There's very clearly something wrong here. I'm just trying to think what it could be. Got it, I think. Essentially, when this item was loaded originally, we probably calculate some stats on it automatically when we load it, and we don't wipe those out when we reload it. Potentially. So to do that, let's go into equipment and we need to wipe out chosen secondary stats before anything. I think that will work, because I think that's basically the problem, is somehow the item already had initialized stats. I'm not sure, but we may actually have another problem in the save data where items are loading from the stats from the item before them. Actually, I think that's fine. Okay, you know what? Let's just try that out. Let's just see if we get these items loading properly now. Okay, that's better. Yeah, okay, awesome. So now my items have the proper stats on them. So my godlike dusty cloth hood has speed, critical strike, armor, and damage. My uber dusty cloth robe, you know what I need to do? I'm going to print screen this. And I'm actually going to close these ones because I want to make sure that the stats aren't resetting, because we had a few issues with that. So we're going to check this one here, make sure we've still got those exact same 4 stats on it, and then we're going to check this one here, make sure we've still got those exact same 4 stats on it. So to do that, we just need to save the game, then drop out, then load it back up, and then just confirm that we have the correct matching stats on the item. And if we do, I'm just going to put the items on and test them and make sure that my character's got the correct stats with them, and then I think we'll have successfully implemented random secondary stats. Okay, speed, crit, armor, damage, all 21. Speed, crit, armor, damage, all 21. Damage, spell damage, physical damage, all 21. Damage, spell damage, physical damage, all 21. And I'd say we nailed it. Okay, next thing, and this is just like a minor little nitpick right here, is I can't have 0 stamina and 0 intellect on these items. So I need to do something about that. let's see, when I calculate an item's stats on scalable items, I don't think that I ceiling it. Wait a minute, you know what? No, I know exactly what the problem is. There actually technically shouldn't be any stats on those items because if you look at now, and this is actually really interesting here, if you look at the poor item quality and the common item quality, they have a stat multiplier of 1, which technically means that they will basically not give you additional stats because you shouldn't get any stats beyond your base stats from wearing them. Whereas if you look at like uncommon, it increases your base stats by 10%. So what that means is that for common item quality items where the stat multiplier is 1, we don't even want to show those stats. So now we could theoretically assign manual stats to those. In which case we actually would want to show them. So maybe what we should do is we should just not display values with a value of 0 in our pop-up window. That's going to be like by far the easiest way to deal with this. So let's go find some get description method here where we display all this stuff. And we display primary stats. So this is the code right here, this get primary stat modifier. So what we want to do is basically, this is a float value, I believe. Yeah, so float primary stat modifier equals this. And then we just want to add the primary stat modifier here, but only if the primary stat modifier is greater than 0f. And then hopefully that will prevent 0 rated stats from showing. Let's let that compile. Save everything, press play, and let's go make sure that our common and inferior quality gear properly don't show 0 of their stats. So we'll look in our bag, and excellent, there we go. Okay, so now we have basically +2 armor, +2 armor. Wow, that's kind of pathetic. But no stats, and that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. And then so this one we actually do. We have primary stats, and then we have the secondary stat and these all still match. Let's see, speed, crit, armor, damage. Speed, crit, armor, damage. And damage, spell damage, physical damage. Damage, spell damage, physical damage. Excellent. So now we have completely randomizable custom random stats that you can put in for secondary stats in the engine. We have completely random item qualities that you can put in. Do you know what I want to do? There is one more thing that I want to do before I end this episode. Right now, it's kind of unrealistic that you have a completely equal chance to get a legendary item as like just some vendor trash. So what I want to do is I actually want to implement a weighted system for this. And what the weighted system will do is it'll allow you to weight the rolls so that you can have a higher chance for a legendary, or I mean a higher chance for trash and a much lower chance for a legendary item. So to do that, we actually need to add another field right here. We are going to add the random quality weight, which is going to be an integer value we'll just call it random weight, and by default it'll be 1. So basically what happens is when a random item quality is chosen, all weights are added up before a random number is rolled close enough. Okay, so basically what this means is that if I give a random weight of like 1 to legendary and like 10,000 to poor quality items, there's like pretty much a 10,000 times higher chance of getting poor quality items. So let's let that come into the inspector here, and you know what else? We are going to need to take the random weight and encapsulate the field as well. So let's go back down to our item qualities and set some weights. So we want the legendary to be like the absolute lowest chance. So we'll give it a random weight of 1. We want, and I'm going to make this probably like a little easier than I would in a normal game, but let's say that we want twice as high of a chance to get an epic quality, and we want 4 times as high a chance to get a poor quality, and basically we want 8. No, you know what? That's regular quality. Okay, let's try that again. Legendary is 1 for the random weight. Epic is 2 for the random weight. Rare is 4 for the random weight. Uncommon is 8 for the random weight. Poor, no, we want common, right? Regular, common is going to be 16 for the random weight, and then poor item quality should be 32. Okay. So basically what this means is like half of the stuff we get should just be utter junk, and it should or the chance should decrease for items as their quality goes up. So now what we want to do is we actually want to write that routine. And I had a page that I had just looked up. Let's just see if I can find it here. That showed me a great algorithm for doing random weights. Okay, here we go. Found the pseudocode. We're just going to paste that in now. So basically this is, let me find the looting code here. Loot drop. Let's close some of this stuff here. Loot table. And, oh, you know what? This is actually going to be inside the actual item itself. So we'll go down to the item class because this is actually where we set it. So go to the definition of equipment, go to the definition of item, and go down to the initialize new item code right here. Perfect. Okay. This is where we want to change this up. So we want to do something like this. This is the pseudocode for figuring out what our item is based on the weights. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to sum all of the weights. So while I is less than valid item qualities dot count, the sum of the weights plus equals valid item qualities I dot random weight. Okay, good. And then here we will want random dot range, and I think we want to put a Unity engine before that, and the min will be 0, and the max will be the sum of the weights, and hopefully we have the int version of this now. Perfect. Okay. And just a second, this is exclusive, which is correct, I think, because we want one less. Okay, this is actually kind of important here. Let's say we have a total weight value of 1, 2, and 4 for a total weight value of 7. We want the numbers 0 through 6 or 1 through 7. I guess it really doesn't matter. Okay. So the num choices here is the valid item qualities dot count, and if random is less than valid item qualities I dot random weight, then return I, otherwise remove that much. Okay. And we're going to assert that, or remove the assertion, and basically now what we can do is we can make a function for that. You know what? We're not even going to make a function. I is the index. Int used index equals 0. And in this case, we're just going to go used Okay, let's try it again. Used index equals 0. And in this case, used index equals I. And we can put that in brackets. And then just, no, not return, whoops, break. There, and that'll break us out of the loop. At which point we'll have a proper used index. And then we can just set that used index right here. And we'll only even bother setting that if there were more than one valid item quality. And that should allow us to get a properly weighted value with a lot more trash and less of each one as we go up. So I just want to take a look at this code here and make sure it looks right. If the random number is less than the qualities.random weight. So this makes sense because our random number can be 0. Let's actually pretend there's only one weight here. We've got a weight of exactly 1. We have one item. The item is a legendary. The sum of the weights is 1. Our random range needs to be 0 for this to match, which means that the sum of the weights needs to be exclusive and outside of the realm of possibilities of being chosen, which is correct because here we see that it is exclusive, so this will deliver us a number between 0 and 0 when there is only 1. And if 0 is less than the random weight of 1, which it is, then we use the index. Okay, perfect. So the math works out. It's all good. Let's go kill a spider and see what kind of stuff drops. I'm actually quite curious to see if this whole weighting thing works properly. Oh, and by the way, I didn't show it here, but if you're interested, here's the Stack Overflow weighted random numbers where I found this pseudocode right here for somebody else basically asking the same question. How do you weight values? So let's try this out. So basically, I would expect to have to kill more than 64 mobs now to get a legendary. Let's just check that assumption. All right, not bad. So I got some utter garbage, 3 good things, bunch more white things. You know what? I feel like common is way too overrepresented in that list of stuff. Like, way too overrepresented. I see 1 inferior and like 7 of the other ones, and I totally feel like those are the wrong numbers. So if we look at common, we see the random weight is only 16. And if we look at poor, we see the random weight is like 32. So we should have had a way higher chance to come up with poor item qualities. So let's take another look at this code here. And just see what happened. So first, we grabbed all our item qualities and then we added them to a list. We know that list works because we get from poor all the way up to legendary. We have the sum of the weight here as 0. We add the random weights from all the items. So far, so good. And we literally did add them all. Okay. Now, we're going to choose a number between 0 and sum of the weights. Also, so far, so good. So basically, the sum of my weights should have been 32 plus 16 plus 8 plus 4 plus, well, basically this number is going to be 63, I think. 2 plus 1, right, basically like 2n minus 1, or 2n squared minus 1 or whatever. Anyway, sum of these is 63. Okay, great. So we have 63 as the sum of our weights. Now, I can choose a random number between 0 and 63. Then so long as I is less than valid item qualities.count, if our current random number is less than our valid item qualities I.randomWeight, used index equals I and break. Otherwise, our random value minus equals our valid item qualities I.randomWeight. So I feel like used index is 0, and if we look at common quality is in the used index. So what that means is that we actually made it through this loop without ever finding a match. Okay, so let's examine this in a situation where we have common item quality with a random weight of 16. And then poor with a random weight of 32. We would have a total value of 48. You know what would probably just be easier? Why don't we just add some debug statements here so we can see what numbers are being thrown around and figure this out a little bit here. So first we're going to ask how many valid item qualities we have. So this is my name plus dot item initialize new item and valid qualities is valid item qualities dot count. All right, and then we'll just make sure that the sum of weights is what we expect. And while we're at it, why don't we just add some debug about what the random number was. And then let's see here. We already know what the random number was, so I just want to know what the random weight is that we're actually looking at. Okay, that looks good. And then let's just see here. We should know that we're breaking, so we'll just put a note in here that we're breaking. And let's save that. And then let's go get some gear to drop and then just watch the debug messages and see what happens with the qualities when we're dropping these. Okay, so we will nuke the spider. Somehow I have more spell power than I'm supposed to. Oh, you know what? I think my character gained a level, that's why. Okay, so here we go. We got the items. Just a second. What do we have in there anyway? We have 2 whites, a green, a gray. Way more greens and whites than we should. Okay. So let's just look at how this is playing out. We have 6 valid qualities with a sum of weights of 63. Makes sense. We get a random number, value at 61. Okay, fine. We are comparing 16 to 61. We end up with the random number coming down to 6, at which point we break. And we land on a weight compare of 8, which would have made this item uncommon. I feel like this algorithm, like the logic is totally wrong in it. my random number in the second round here didn't get reduced. So I started with a sum of weight of 63. Oh, okay, actually weight compare makes sense, yeah. But I still feel like this algorithm is wrong. Like we should have approximately half that list populated with poor quality items. And that's not happening. I think what I'm going to do is basically I think I'm going to take this one offline, see if I can just mess around with the weighted roll a little more in order to get it perfected. But I think that is definitely like good enough for now. So as always, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to thumbs up the video, subscribe to AnyRPG YouTube channel, or just leave a note in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.